All right, let's dive in. You folks have really outdone yourselves this time. Sent in a whole bunch of articles, studies, the whole shebang about change management in the workplace.
Yeah, especially how companies try to, get their employees all excited about the latest tech. Like, we're supposed to be just jumping for joy about it.
Seriously, it's like they think we should be throwing parades for algorithms and robots.
Yeah.
Back in my day, we just rolled up our sleeves and got to work.
Hmm.
No need for all these fancy gadgets telling us what to do.
It's funny, though, a lot of these sources actually kind of hint at that, like a longing for, I don't know, simpler times, maybe, when human know-how and a good handshake were valued more than, I don't know, data points and automation and all that.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of data points, have you seen this Gleicher's formula thing? C equals A times B times D, all greater than X. It's like they're trying to come up with some mathematical equation for, like, messing with people's heads.
It's a bit creepy, if you ask me. Trying to, like, boil down human emotions and motivations to a formula.
All right, so let's break this thing down. C is the change they want, right? Which in this case seems to be all about cramming this new tech down our throats whether we want it or not.
Right.
Then you got A, which is all about how miserable they want us to feel about how things are right now. Like, they need us to be unhappy with the way things are, so we'll even consider changing.
Exactly. Like, we should be so dissatisfied with our current reality that any change sounds good.
Right, then there's B, which is like this shiny, perfect picture of the future they're trying to sell us. Where robots do all the work and we all just kick back and relax.
But of course, they kind of skip over, the not so great parts of that future. What happens to, like, actually talking to people, having real relationships? Or, like, feeling like your work actually matters.
Exactly. Are we all just going to become like these mindless robots ourselves, staring at screens all day and letting algorithms make all the decisions?
Yeah.
Sounds pretty bleak if you ask me.
Yeah, definitely not the utopia they make it out to be.
Then there's D, which is all the actual steps they take to, make this change happen. Like all the training sessions and new software. And, oh, don't forget, the endless stream of emails telling us how thrilled we should be about all this.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to program us to be excited about, well, being replaced by robots.
Basically. And then finally you have X, which is supposed to be like how hard we think it'll be to change.
This is where it gets really interesting because what they're really trying to do is convince us that not changing is way worse than, going along with their plan.
So it's like adapt or die, huh? Embrace the robot overlords or become obsolete.
Pretty much. But there's also this, like, undercurrent in some of these sources, this feeling that maybe, just maybe, this whole tech-obsessed future isn't all it's cracked up to be. Like, maybe we're losing something important in all this rush to, progress.
I think you're right. I mean, they toss around the word innovation like it's always a good thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Maybe we don't need all this fancy technology to solve all our problems.
Maybe what we need is to get back to some good old-fashioned common sense, real human connection, the kind of values that have, stood the test of time.
Couldn't agree more. There's something to be said for the way things used to be. A little less complicated, a little more human.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, hey, remember those things? Those were pretty good, weren't they? And you know what? They really were. A firm handshake, looking someone in the eye, knowing your neighbors, these are things that no algorithm can replace.
You hit the nail on the head there. It's like we've traded in all this good stuff for, I don't know, data and metrics and efficiency. And I'm not sure we got the better end of that deal.
It's funny. They keep talking about artificial intelligence like it's the answer to everything.
Right.
But what about plain old human intelligence, the kind you get from experience, from making mistakes, from actually living life? You can't download that.
Right. Like we've started to think a technology can think for us. That's a slippery slope, my friend. A very slippery slope.
Totally agree. We need to remember who's in charge here. We set the priorities, we make the decisions, we shape the future. And we can't let technology do that for us. We've got to take the reins back.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It's like we got so caught up in all the shiny new gadgets that we forgot who's steering the ship. I think a lot of folks are starting to realize that. There's a real hunger for, something more, something deeper.
Something real.
Exactly. And that's where this whole change management thing starts to feel a little Orwellian. Like they're trying to control how we think, what we believe, how we feel about all this. It's like, trust us, the robots know best.
Sometimes I do miss the good old days when you could actually talk to a real person on the phone, when you didn't need an app for every little thing.
Yeah. There was a certain simplicity to those days that seems to be lost in all this technological clutter.
There's this quote from one of the articles we got that really stuck with me. It said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that this whole push for progress has come at a cost. That we've traded in our humanity for efficiency, our connection for convenience.
Wow. That's powerful.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it really gets to the heart of what we're talking about here, this unease, this feeling that we're hurtling towards a future we haven't really agreed to. They call it progress, but does it feel like progress to everyone?
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of change management starts to feel a little less about, helping people adapt and a little more about controlling the narrative.
It's like they're saying, don't worry, be happy, the robots are in control. But, I'm not so sure I'm buying it.
Me neither. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. There's a growing sense of, I don't know, maybe rebellion is too strong a word, but definitely a pushback against this idea that technology is the answer to everything.
Yeah, it's like people are starting to wake up and say, hold on a minute. This isn't the future I signed up for.
Right. And maybe, just maybe, it's not too late to change course, to create a future that's a little more human, a little less automated, a little more connected to the things that really matter.
Well said. Well said. And on that note, I think we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we'll delve deeper into this idea of pushing back against the technological tide. What can we do as individuals, as communities, to reclaim our agency and shape a future that reflects our values, not just the values of Silicon Valley? Stay tuned.
It's like they're telling us that progress is this one-way street, a highway with no exits. But what if we took a detour? What if we went back to, valuing craftsmanship, human ingenuity, actually making things with our own two hands?
I bet a lot of folks would say amen to that. And, these sources really do touch on this feeling that something's not quite right, the sense that we're being rushed into a future we never really asked for. They call it progress, but honestly, does it really feel like progress to everybody?
Exactly. And that's where this whole change management thing starts to feel a little creepy, Like they're trying to manage our perceptions, control the narrative, convince us we're all happy little campers, even if we have our doubts.
It's like they're saying, just trust us, the robots know best. But, sometimes I miss the good old days, when you could just pick up the phone and talk to a real person. You didn't need an app for everything.
Oh, absolutely. There is a simplicity to those days that just seems lost in all this tech overload. And a lot of these sources really highlight that. They talk about like real human connection, community, the kind of values that have held society together for, centuries.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, remember those things. Remember how good they were.
Yeah.
And you know what? They were good. A firm handshake, a face-to-face conversation, knowing your neighbors. These are the kinds of things that no algorithm can replace.
You got that right. And it's interesting how these sources contrast those traditional values with this current obsession with data and metrics and efficiency. It's like they're saying, we've forgotten what really matters.
It's like they've replaced wisdom with algorithms, experience with data points, intuition with AI. And honestly, I'm not so sure that's a fair trade.
That's the core of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're sacrificing something intangible, something vital in this mad dash for technological advancement. I think that's why it strikes a chord with so many people. They feel like something's being lost, something precious.
It's funny, they talk about artificial intelligence like it's some kind of magic bullet, the solution to all our problems. But what about, human intelligence? What about the wisdom that comes from years of experience, from messing up, from just living life?
I think these sources are saying we've started to undervalue those qualities. We've become too reliant on technology to do our thinking for us. And that's dangerous because technology, it's a tool. It shouldn't be a crutch.
Exactly. We need to remember who's calling the shots here. We make the decisions, we set the priorities, we shape the future. We can't let technology dictate that.
It's like we were so dazzled by all these shiny new toys that we forgot who was holding the reins. I think a lot of these sources are like, a wake-up call. Like, hey, remember, you're in charge here. Take back your power.
So what's the bottom line? Are we all supposed to ditch our smartphones and go live off the grid?
Well, that's always an option, but I think it's more about finding a balance. We can appreciate the good things technology brings without letting it take over our lives, without compromising our values, without losing sight of what makes us human.
So how do we do that? How do we navigate this crazy, complicated world without losing ourselves in the process?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I think it starts with awareness. If we understand the tactics they're using, if we see how technology is shaping our lives, even in subtle ways, then we can start to make more conscious choices.
So being skeptical is important. Questioning the narrative, not just blindly accepting everything we're told.
Absolutely. And it's also about remembering what truly matters. Family, community, connection, purpose. Those are the things that give life meaning, that make us who we are. And those aren't things that can be replaced by algorithms or robots.
Well said. I think you've given us a lot to chew on here. Maybe it's not about having all the answers. Maybe it's just about asking the right questions.
Yeah, that might be the key to navigating this uncertain future. Staying curious, open to new perspectives, always questioning.
It's funny, they keep talking about the future like it's something that's just going to happen to us.
Hmm.
But we have a choice, right? We can shape the future we want.
And maybe that future isn't about flying cars and robots doing all the work. Maybe it's about getting back to the things that truly matter, the things that have always mattered. Human connection, community, meaning, purpose.
And maybe, just maybe, it's about remembering that sometimes the good old days weren't so bad after all.
You know, you've hit on something important there. There's a reason we look back on those days with fondness. It's because they represent something we've lost, something we long for. And maybe, just maybe, it's not too late to get it back.
I like the sound of that.
Me too.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for this segment of our deep dive. We've talked about the tactics of change management, the allure of technology, and the lasting power of human values. But more importantly, we've questioned the narrative, challenged assumptions, and hopefully got you thinking critically about the world around you.
Ultimately, we've landed on a simple but powerful truth. The future isn't set in stone, it's a choice.
And that choice is ours to make. So as you go about your day, remember what we've talked about today.
Remember the importance of human connection, of community, of those values that have stood the test of time.
And remember that you have the power to shape the future, to create a world that reflects your values, your hopes, your dreams. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of ideas. We've been talking a lot about this push for everyone to change, especially when it comes to all this new tech. But honestly, what about those of us who aren't exactly thrilled about robots taking over the world?
Oh yeah, these sources definitely get that. There's this definite feeling out there that all this progress, so-called progress, has come with a price tag. Like, we've lost some human connection, traditional skills and knowledge aren't valued as much.
You know, it's like they're trying to tell us that if it's new, it's automatically better. But sometimes the old ways, they work just fine.
Right. Like there's wisdom and tradition and doing things the way they've always been done. It seems like that's getting lost in all this talk about, innovation and disruption and all that.
So what do we do about it? Are we just supposed to sit back and, let the robots take over?
I wouldn't wave the white flag just yet. Actually, a lot of these sources give some pretty practical tips for pushing back against this tech tsunami, for taking back control, for protecting the things that really matter.
Okay, lay it on me. What's the game plan? How do we fight back against the digital overlords?
Well, first, remember that Gleicher's formula we talked about. They're trying to make you feel bad about how things are now, paint a pretty picture of the future, and make it all seem easy peasy, but you don't have to buy it.
So be skeptical. Don't just take their word for it.
Exactly. Ask questions, do your own research. Don't let them tell you what to think.
And what about all this talk about openness and fairness? How do we know if they actually mean it or if it's just like a trick to get us to go along?
That's a great question. I think the answer is you got to pay attention. Look past the fancy words and see what they're actually doing. Are they really listening to what people are saying? Are they willing to compromise? Or are they just, talking the talk but not walking the walk?
So trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to speak up. Share your concerns. Connect with other people who feel the same way. There's power in numbers, right?
Just like they say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Or, maybe in this case, a little less WD-40 and a little more actual human interaction.
That's a great point. Maybe the best way to fight this whole tech takeover thing is to just, disconnect.
You mean unplug from the matrix, go off the grid?
Well, maybe not that extreme, but just spend less time staring at screens, more time, actually talking to people face to face, more time doing things that make you happy.
So put down the phone, close the laptop, and go for a walk in the woods.
Exactly. Get back in touch with nature. Get back in touch with yourself. Get back in touch with what really matters.
I think that's something we can all get behind. All right, folks. Well, that about wraps up this deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground. The tricky tactics of change management, the shiny allure of all things tech, and the power of those good old-fashioned human values.
We've challenged some assumptions, looked at things from different angles, and hopefully helped you all navigate this crazy world with, a little more wisdom and a lot more heart.
And remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. We get to make it.
So go out there and create the future you want to see. A future that honors tradition, that values real connection, and that remembers sometimes those good old days, they really were the best days. Until next time.